Hey, it's Mike over at Cross Country Mortgage. It's Monday morning. It's time for your Monday morning mortgage update for the week of September the 15th. They hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Beautiful weather in the North State, rain and thunder showers, and really setting it up for it's not fall yet, but it sure feels like it. It sure felt like it over the weekend. So, what happened last week? What are we going to look at for this week that's going to impact the market? Boy, a big week for the market. So let's kind of dive right into it. Last week, we saw the market flat. Let me show you the mortgage-backed securities chart. You can see in the last 5 days here, a little bit of movement up and down, but we hit what's called this ceiling of resistance at 101.52, and the market just really didn't go above it that much. The week before, we saw an improvement in rates. So no rate change last week. Now, this week is very different. We've got the Fed meeting starting on Tuesday and ending on Wednesday. That's the one thing that's going to impact rates. And then we also have a big retail sales reports coming out this week as well. So let's talk about this Fed meeting, this September Fed meeting. So impactful. Let's kind of put this in perspective. At the beginning of this year, everybody thought that the Fed would cut rates 5-6 times. And then by March of this year, maybe 1 or 2. And then over the summer, no rate cuts. And now everything's shifted. And this meeting that starts Tuesday and ends Wednesday, it's the Fed meeting in September. The Fed meets every month and a half to set policy. Treasury Department pays bills. Federal Reserve sets policy. It's not a matter of if they're going to cut rates. It really is a matter of how much. And so we'll be paying a lot of attention to what the Fed's going to do. Now, heading into the weekend, there was about a 25% chance the Fed would cut the Fed fund rate by 0.5%. Everybody knows they're going to cut it by 1/4, but heading into the weekend, about a 25% chance they'd get a bigger cut. After the weekend, starting today, about a 65% chance that the Fed's going to cut 0.5%. So why the change? It's all about what somebody said. So there's this guy who's a Wall Street Journal reporter. He's apparently the mole of the Fed, and he came out with an article over the weekend that indicated cryptically that the Fed might cut the rates 0.5 point because of the softening labor market. Softening labor market. If somebody wants to quit their job, maybe a year or two ago, there was 10, 15 job offers. Now, if somebody wants to quit their job nationwide, there's maybe 1, 2, or 3 offers out there. There's been a lot of layoffs. Employers aren't just hiring as much as they should. So the labor market with monthly reports has shown signs of softening. And that means a weaker economy. And that means the Fed might cut rates more. And one of the big reasons why this softening market is so important is because the Federal Reserve is going to base their rate cuts on data. And if we start to see data that's showing signs that inflation's coming down and there's a weaker economy headed, they're going to cut that Fed fund rate. So remember 2 things about these rates, about the Fed fund rate. Number one, lenders have already baked in the rate cut. They already have, in the last couple weeks, the rates are set today on Monday, baking in at least a 0.25% rate cut. So typically when the Fed cuts rates, we don't see this big reduction in mortgage rates, which is the second thing to remember. The Fed can't push a button and cut mortgage rates. So if we see the Federal Reserve cut their Fed fund rate 0.25% or 0.5%, it doesn't mean the Fed that mortgage rates are just going to come down 0.25% and 0.5%. I want to show you some perspective really on why what the Fed does on Wednesday in the big picture doesn't really matter. So this is a 2-year average of the Fed of the trading of mortgage-backed securities. And when we know that when we see this graph go down, that means money's flowing out of the bond market and mortgage rates are going up. When we see the graph go up, like we did here, we know that that the Fed is or money's flowing into that bond market, and we're seeing mortgage rates actually improve. So if we go back to the chart here, you can see at the bottom there, when I move my cursor, there's a date. The last time we saw pricing as good as it is today was January, February of 2023. If we go over to the right here, this is today's pricing. We see this graph at the same level, okay? And if you remember, in March of 2023, everybody said that by the summer of 2023, rates were going to be 6%. There was even some projections, 5.5%. Fannie Mae came out at the beginning of 2023 saying, hey, we think rates are going to be 6%. Everybody was talking about it. Don't worry about it. Rates are going to come down. Folks, it did the complete opposite, if you remember. So if you look at where the rates were in March of 2023, a little over 7%, 7.25%. Look what happened by October of 2023. We were quoting rates over 8.5%, 8.5% at the end of October 2023. And then there were some signs that inflation was getting under control, but it was short-lived. Look what happened by December. Within a couple months, we saw this market. My cursor isn't working well here, but we saw the market improve and we saw rates get better. Everybody was excited. And then what happened? Then rates got worse again. Okay. And now if we look at what we've seen since April 2023, we're starting to see rates definitely move to the point of improving. We're starting to see a trend of lower interest rates. The point I'm making is that there's been so much volatility and everybody tries to guess what's going to happen with rates. We really don't know what's going to happen. What we can only control is our efforts, our attitude, and what we do on a daily basis to consult with our clients to give them the best information possible. So the other big thing that's happening with this meeting is economic projections. So this is an important meeting because the Fed members are going to come out. They start the meeting on Tuesday, they end it on Wednesday, and they're going to come out with their economic projections on where they might cut rates in the future. They're going to do another 0.25% cut possibly in December. Is it going to continue into January and March of next year? Everything really is dependent on data. If we start to see inflation get under control, the Fed will continue to cut rates. If we start to see signs of a weakening economy, the Fed will continue to cut rates. I also get a lot of people says, well, what's going to happen with the election? How does we were going to hold off until the election. None of that really matters. It doesn't really matter who the president is. It matters who controls the Fed and the Treasury. Even though they're supposed to be independent, which party is in charge? And keep in mind that the policies that they make, they don't put these policies into effect overnight. All these politicians can make all these promises, but they still have to get them through the Congress and the House, and they still have to pass all this stuff. So the point I'm trying to make is calmer heads prevail. The lenders have already baked in this rate cut. What you need to do is use this information as a reason to contact your clients and your past clients and your current clients. You can't be the source of the information, but you can absolutely interpret this information, put it in perspective for them, give them some insight on what this really means. And obviously, if we start to see better rates, that means more affordability. That means more people are going to dive into the market, more competition. We're already seeing more inventory out there. So this is just a great opportunity and a great reason to be able to communicate with somebody. Okay, the second thing is retail sales. Big retail sales coming out. Are we buying stuff or are we not buying stuff? I saw an interesting report that groceries have gone up 2.5% since 2019. So if you bought a basket of groceries and it cost you $100 in 2019, today that same basket of groceries costs you $250. Think about that. That is impactful. That's really impactful to people's wallets. And so are we still buying more stuff? And if we're not, that means a weaker economy. That means these rates will come down, and that's a positive thing in a lot of ways, except that we're seeing a weaker economy. So again, the Federal Reserve rate cuts, retail sales, that's what we're paying attention to. We're floating into Wednesday. Wednesday afternoon is when the Fed comes out with the minutes of the report of the meeting and what they're going to do and their interest rate decision. So have a great productive week. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you next week.